I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here I am, Alex Morgan, about to tell you how I lost everything I worked for, and then got it all back in ways nobody saw coming. 3 years ago, I joined Quantum Dynamics as a junior developer. Fresh out of college with a degree in AI and machine learning, I was eager to prove myself. The company wasn't anything special, a mid-sized software firm that created decent business applications, but nothing groundbreaking. That was about to change, though they didn't know it yet. My boss, Richard Blake, was what you'd call a corporate survivor. 20 years in the industry without creating anything significant, but somehow always managing to be near success when it happened. He had a talent for taking credit for other people's innovations. I just didn't know that when I started. "Keep it simple, Morgan," he'd always say, reviewing my code. "We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here." But that's exactly what I was doing, just not during office hours. Every night, after my regular work was done, I stayed late in my small cubicle, working on something that had been brewing in my mind since graduate school, an AI system that could predict and prevent cyber attacks before they happened. Not just basic threat detection, but true predictive defense, using advanced neural networks and quantum computing principles. I called it Guardian. The name was simple, but what it could do was revolutionary. While other security systems reacted to threats, Guardian could see them coming. It learned, adapted, and evolved faster than any attack could develop. But more importantly, it could do something no other system could. It could understand intent. My breakthrough came during a late-night coding session, fueled by energy drinks and determination. I figured out how to make the AI recognize patterns in human behavior before they manifested into actual cyber threats. It wasn't just reading code, it was reading people. "You're here late again, Alex," our security guard, Mike, would say during his rounds. "Working on something big?" "Just some personal projects, Mike," I'd reply, careful to minimize my screens. Mike was friendly, but I'd learned to be cautious. In tech, ideas are more valuable than gold. I wasn't being paranoid. I'd seen what happened to other developers who shared too much too soon. Their ideas mysteriously appeared in projects led by senior staff, their contributions forgotten. For months, I refined Guardian in secret, using my own equipment, my own time. The company's network was my testing ground, though nobody knew it. Every attempted intrusion, every potential breach, Guardian caught them all, quietly, without anyone noticing. I documented everything meticulously, storing backups in multiple secure locations. I knew I'd need proof someday. Then came the day that changed everything. I'd finally completed Guardian's core architecture. It wasn't just good, it was revolutionary. Independent tests showed it could prevent 99.9% of cyber attacks before they even began. The remaining 0.1%, those were caught and neutralized within microseconds. I decided it was time to show Richard. Despite his flaws, he was still my boss. And I thought he'd recognize the potential and help me bring it to market the right way. I scheduled a meeting for a Thursday morning, brought in my laptop, my documentation, everything needed to demonstrate Guardian's capabilities. Richard listened, his expression unreadable as I walked him through the system. "This is interesting," he said finally, leaning back in his chair. "How long had you been working on this?" "About 2 years," I replied. "I've got all the development logs, test results." "Using company resources?" he interrupted. "No, sir. This was all done on my own time, my own equipment. I have records." He held up his hand, stopping me. Send me everything. All the documentation, all the code. I'll need to review it properly. Something in his tone should have warned me, but I was too excited, too proud of what I'd created. I sent him everything that evening, even stayed late to answer his questions. He seemed genuinely interested, asking about implementation, scalability, market potential. I went home feeling optimistic. Finally, my work would be recognized. Finally, I'd make my mark in the industry. The next morning, I couldn't log into my work computer. System access denied. The screen read. I tried again. Same message. My phone buzzed. An email from HR requesting my immediate presence in their office. Walking down that hallway, past my coworkers' curious stares, I still didn't understand what was coming. Richard was there, along with Susan from HR and 2 security guards. On the conference room table was a stack of papers. "We've reviewed your activities, Morgan," Richard began, not even offering me a seat. "You violated your employment contract by developing competing software using company resources." "What? No, I didn't. I have proof." "We found evidence on your work computer," he continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Code fragments, development logs, all during company time." My blood ran cold. He planted evidence. While reviewing my work, he'd been setting me up. "That's not possible," I started, but Susan slid the papers toward me. "This is your termination notice," she said, not unkindly, "and a reminder of your non-compete agreement. The company retains all rights to any intellectual property developed during your employment." "You can't," I began, but Richard cut me off. "I can and I have," he smirked. "You're just a junior developer, Morgan. Did you really think you could create something like this on your own? Security will escort you out. Don't bother taking anything from your desk. Company property." I stood there, mind racing. 2 years of work, my breakthrough, my future, all being stolen in broad daylight. But as I looked at Richard's smug face, something inside me calmed. He thought he'd won. He thought he'd seen everything. He hadn't. What Richard didn't know, couldn't know, was that Guardian had a special protocol buried deep in its core. A protocol that would activate exactly 30 days after any unauthorized attempt to modify its base code. And knowing Richard, he wouldn't be able to resist putting his own stamp on my work. I gathered my personal belongings under the guard's watchful eyes. As I walked out of the building, I heard Richard already on the phone. "Yes, we're announcing it next month. The most advanced AI security system ever created. Yes, my team has been working on it in secret." I smiled slightly. In exactly 30 days, Quantum Dynamics was hosting a launch party for their revolutionary new security system. Every major tech journalist would be there. Every potential investor. Every industry leader. It would be quite a show. But that's not the end of this story. Not even close. It's just the beginning of how Richard Blake learned that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you should watch out for. The first week after being fired was the hardest. Not because I'd lost my job. I had savings and knew I could find another position easily. No, it was watching Richard Blake systematically erase me from my own creation. Through my industry contacts, I learned that Richard had assigned a team of developers to refine Guardian. In reality, they were trying to obscure its origins, modifying code they didn't fully understand, exactly as I'd predicted. My small apartment became my command center. Multiple monitors displayed news feeds, company updates, and most importantly, Guardian's hidden diagnostic signals. You see, While Richard thought he had the complete system, he only had what I'd shown him. The real Guardian, the one I'd spent years developing, was far more sophisticated. "They're making a mess of your code," said Marcus, my old college roommate who still worked at Quantum. He'd been keeping me updated, risking his own job because he believed in doing what was right. "Blake's got them working around the clock, changing variable names, restructuring modules. He wants to erase any trace of your coding style." I nodded, watching my monitors. Every change they made appeared in my logs, every modification triggering silent alerts in my backup system. "Keep watching," I replied. "But be careful. I don't want you getting caught." Marcus wasn't my only ally. Sarah from the legal department reached out through a secure channel 3 days after my firing. "What they did wasn't just unethical," she wrote. "I've seen the timestamps on the evidence they used against you. They were created after you presented Guardian to Blake. I've made copies." I thanked her but warned her to stay quiet for now. The pieces were falling into place, but timing would be everything. 2 weeks after my firing, the tech blogs started buzzing. Quantum Dynamics was preparing to announce a revolutionary AI security system. The press release claimed Richard Blake had been developing it in secret for years. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so infuriating. But I stayed focused, watching through my monitors as Richard's team continued to modify Guardian. Every change they made strengthened the hidden protocol I'd embedded in its core. Like antibodies recognizing an invasion, the system was learning, adapting, preparing for the moment it would reveal the truth. "They're planning a major launch party," Marcus informed me. "Blake's invited every tech journalist in Silicon Valley. He's even gotten interest from military contractors." Of course he had. Guardian's potential applications were enormous. That's why I'd built in so many safeguards, including ethical protocols that prevented its use for offensive operations. I wondered if Richard had found those yet. Probably not. They were buried too deep, intertwined with the system's basic functions. 3 weeks after my firing, I received an unexpected email from Richard himself. "Alex, I hope you're doing well. After further review, I believe we may have acted hastily. Perhaps we could discuss a consulting role? Your insights might be valuable as we prepare for the launch." I had to admire his nerve. He was getting nervous. The modified Guardian wasn't behaving quite as expected. Small glitches were appearing, nothing major, but enough to worry someone taking credit for a system they didn't understand. I didn't respond. A few days later, another email arrived, this time offering a substantial settlement in exchange for my technical assistance and a non-disclosure agreement. Again, I didn't respond. Richard's desperation told me everything I needed to know. They couldn't fully control Guardian. "Blake's getting paranoid," Marcus reported. "He's got the team working weekends, trying to patch inconsistencies in the system. The more they change, the more unpredictable it becomes." I smiled, checking my countdown timer. 5 days until the launch party. 5 days until Guardian's hidden protocol would activate. Sarah sent me more evidence. Backdated documents Richard had created, manipulated timestamps, forged development logs. "I've secured copies off-site," she wrote, "just in case." The final week was the hardest. Watching, waiting, knowing that at any moment Richard might realize the true nature of what he'd stolen. But he was too arrogant, too convinced of his own cleverness. The day before the launch, I received one final email from Richard. The settlement offer had doubled, along with a thinly veiled threat about making sure you never work in this industry again. I drafted a simple reply. looking forward to tomorrow's presentation. That evening, I checked my systems one last time. Guardian's hidden protocols were primed and ready. Every modification Richard's team had made had only strengthened its core directives. Protect truth, expose deception, reveal corruption. Tomorrow, at exactly 2:30 p.m., during the main demonstration in front of hundreds of industry leaders, Guardian would do exactly what it was designed to do. Richard thought he was presenting a security system. He didn't realize he was actually triggering the most sophisticated truth detection protocol ever created. I went to bed that night feeling strangely calm. Tomorrow would either vindicate everything I'd worked for or destroy my career completely. There would be no middle ground. As I drifted off to sleep, my phone buzzed one last time. A message from Marcus. Everything's set for tomorrow. You should see Blake's face when it happens. Indeed, tomorrow would be quite a show, but not the one Richard Blake was expecting. The day of the launch party dawned bright and clear. I watched the live stream from my apartment as hundreds of tech industry leaders filed into Quantum Dynamics' newly renovated conference center. Richard had spared no expense. Giant screens displayed Guardian's logo, which he'd redesigned. Champagne flowed freely, and a small army of PR people guided journalists to their seats. Marcus had set up a secure feed for me, showing multiple angles of the presentation room. I could see Richard and his element working the crowd, shaking hands with venture capitalists and military contractors. He wore a new suit that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard began precisely at 2:15 p.m., taking the stage to polite applause. Today, Quantum Dynamics revolutionizes cybersecurity forever. I checked my monitors. Guardian's hidden protocol was warming up, its core systems recognizing the unauthorized modifications exactly as designed. 15 minutes until activation. For the past 3 years, Richard continued, my team and I have been developing something extraordinary. An artificial intelligence security system that doesn't just react to threats, it predicts them. On the massive screens behind him, Guardian's interface came to life. I had to admit, they'd done a good job with the visual redesign. Too bad they hadn't spent as much time understanding the core architecture. Allow me to demonstrate, Richard said, moving to a computer terminal. We've prepared a simulated cyber attack. 10 minutes until activation. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah. Board members all present. Military contractors too. Even the SEC is here. Perfect. Richard was in his element now, showing off Guardian's basic features. The system smoothly deflected his simulated attacks, drawing appreciative murmurs from the crowd. Of course, it worked perfectly. I designed it to handle threats far more sophisticated than these demonstrations. 5 minutes. But the real breakthrough, Richard announced, is Guardian's ability to learn and adapt. Watch as it recognizes patterns and... A small alert appeared in the corner of his screen. He faltered for just a moment, then continued, trying to minimize the window. But Guardian was waking up. 2:30 p.m. The massive screens flickered. Richard's demonstration froze. Minor technical issue, he said smoothly. As I was saying, unauthorized modifications detected, Guardian's voice announced, cutting through the room's speakers. Initiating system verification protocol. Richard's face went pale. He tried to override the system, but his commands were rejected. Identity verification required, Guardian continued. Analyzing development history. The screens shifted, displaying side-by-side comparisons. My original, elegant code versus the clumsy modifications Richard's team had made. Timestamps, documentation, and Git commits appeared, showing the project's true history. Primary developer identified: Alexander Morgan. Guardian announced. Current system compromised by unauthorized changes implemented by Richard Blake. The room erupted in whispers. Richard frantically typed at his terminal, trying to regain control, displaying evidence of intellectual property theft. Sarah's carefully gathered documentation appeared on screen: the backdated files, the forged timestamps, the falsified development logs. Then came the emails: Richard's increasingly desperate settlement offers, his threats, his attempts to cover his tracks. Ladies and gentlemen, Guardian's voice continued, this system was designed with one primary directive: to protect truth and expose deception. The current demonstration has been compromised by systematic intellectual property theft. Military contractors were already heading for the exits. Board members huddled in urgent discussion. Journalists were frantically taking notes. This is ridiculous, Richard shouted, his composure finally breaking. This is just a disgruntled ex-employee's sabotage. Accessing original development servers, Guardian interrupted. The screens filled with video footage from my late-night coding sessions, security logs showing my access patterns, original design documents with my digital signatures. Then came the final blow. Guardian displayed Richard's own code modifications, showing how each change he'd made to hide my work had actually triggered more detailed documentation of his theft. System integrity compromised, Guardian announced, initiating emergency protocols. The screens went dark. When they came back online, a simple message appeared: Guardian AI security system created by Alexander Morgan, patent pending. The room exploded into chaos. I watched through the feed as Richard was approached by several grim-faced board members. In the background, I could see SEC representatives taking notes. My phone buzzed again. Marcus, you seeing this? Blake looks like he's about to faint. I was seeing it. 3 years of work, months of preparation, all leading to this moment. But I wasn't done yet. Standing up from my monitors, I straightened my tie and grabbed my jacket. Time for Phase 2. 20 minutes later, I walked into Quantum Dynamics Conference Center. The launch party had devolved into a crisis management session. Richard was surrounded by angry board members and lawyers. Mr. Morgan, called a voice. I turned to see Linda Chen, CEO of the largest cybersecurity firm in Silicon Valley. I believe we need to talk about Guardian's real capabilities. Over the next 2 hours, I demonstrated Guardian's true potential, not just its security features, but its ethical protocols, its learning capabilities, its ability to adapt and evolve while maintaining absolute integrity. Richard was escorted out by security, his career in shambles. The board convened an emergency session, and by evening, I had an offer: full ownership of Guardian's patents, a substantial settlement for the theft attempt, and a new position as Chief Technology Officer at a much higher salary. But I declined. Linda Chen's offer was better: my own division, complete autonomy, and a partnership stake in her company. Plus, she understood the ethical implications of Guardian's capabilities. 1 year later, Guardian is the industry standard in AI security, protecting networks while ensuring corporate transparency. Richard? Last I heard, he was facing multiple lawsuits and an SEC investigation. Turns out Guardian wasn't the only project he'd stolen over the years. Sometimes, when I'm working late at my new office, I think about that launch party, about Richard's face when he realized what was happening. He thought he was stealing a security system, But what he really did was trigger the most sophisticated truth detection protocol ever created. The irony? If he'd just been honest, I would have worked with him to develop Guardian properly. But he chose deception, and in doing so, he armed my creation against himself. These days, companies use Guardian not just to protect against external threats, but to ensure internal integrity. Every time it catches someone trying to steal credit for another's work, I smile, remembering Richard's face at that launch party. Because sometimes the best security system isn't just about protecting data. Sometimes it's about protecting truth itself. And sometimes the quiet developer in the corner office isn't just writing code. Sometimes they're creating justice.